Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. We are 5 minutes early. We're 5 minutes early because my lights might go out. Bruce's lights are always out, and Nicola has done a terrible thing. He's tidied away, had fantastic things on his desk, and he's flipping tidied them away. But we were just talking before we started, and I thought, well, we might as well start. And we were talking about not DJ. Whoa, hush my mouth. The Parrot situation and the decline in market share that they've seen. And well, Bruce, you offered some opinions on that. I'll let you go first with your opinion on that.
Well, it seemed like they were claiming that the whole consumer drone market was down by 45%, and that sounds like a big number, but I wouldn't be surprised, to be totally honest, because drones have been there for a while now. I think most people who are going to buy a drone have probably bought a drone. The upgrade, why would you sell your Mavic for the Mavic Pro or the Mavic Zoom? Because it still works just as well today, even though there's a new model. It doesn't stop the old ones from working. I think we've probably reached maximum drone in terms of the sales volumes. And then, of course, you've got the chilling effect of all this regulation. Every country in the world is now treating drones like they're lethal devices. And, you've got to wait, you've got to register, you've got to sit exams in some places. It's just getting harder and harder and harder for the average member of the public to go and buy and use a drone. So I think we might have reached the peak. It might be sort of just plateauing or even in decline from this point on.
I think
actually it's sort of a deja vu moment, putting aside the regulations thing. Yeah, I seem to remember something very similar happening in another industry, loosely related to ours, with GoPro.
Oh, okay. Did that hit a point and fell away, did it?
Yeah, they were like,
we reached maximum.
Wow,
yeah, that's why GoPro's
all of a sudden, so much competition, and rather good competition. I mean, they still have like probably the highest quality video recorded from an action camera, in my opinion, but their sales have gone down because the Chinese have offered a lot of cameras at lower prices that are pretty decent, and some people could say, okay, I'm fine with that. Dip in okay, maybe not dip, like a slight compromise in image quality or some other feature, but it's like 3 times cheaper, so that makes sense. And also the market is saturated, and these cameras, they don't die easy, so there's no point in replacing them every year. I mean, I still mourn my GoPro 3 Black, and if I hadn't lost it, I'd still have it and I'd still be using it, because the quality on that thing was amazing, especially compared to everything else that was available at the time.
I think FPVs are the only ones keeping GoPro alive, because we're constantly crashing and breaking cameras and things. So if it wasn't for us, they'd be out of business.
Yeah, probably.
Hello, Dr. Greg. We started without you, largely
because
we're
sorry. I was
no. You're not late. You're not late. We started early because my power's probably going to go and things. We were just talking about Parrot, and of course you know about Parrot.
I do.
You do. And Mad RC, before I go on any further, says I think Parrot will. In fact, perhaps you can answer this or speak to this, Greg, with your ex-Parrot employee hat on. I think Parrot will realign towards their SenseFly side, and the Anafi will become, or however you say it, will become a side project for that. They'll continue to sell, but pushing more towards their Pix 4D business line, which I don't disagree with that. What do you think, Greg?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Parrot is a publicly traded company, and so they had to release, in my experience, they had to release this announcement of cutting before even any of the staff actually knew about it, based on those kind of rules around public trading. And so I think it'll be a long week for a lot of the Parrot staff to kind of see what that reorganization looks like. I think you're right. Like, I think the writing's on the wall that, like, how many more tries are you going to give at the consumer market and have, shareholders looking at, the more profitable sides of SenseFly, Pix 4D, some of these other investments that they made, Plank Aerosystems, and some of the other investments, as well as I think MicaSense is not quite fully acquired, but will be acquired at some point soon. And so you know, if you're going to put your money into something, why not grow the commercial side? Now, part of that, though, has been this kind of rebuilding around Parrot Business Solutions and getting kind of on messaging. You know, with Anafi, it's been, you know, you got Anafi work, but then you have the whole consumer side. Like, that's been Parrot's problem all along, is like, are we a toy company or are we a professional company? How do we repackage this and brand it and service commercial customers, which is way different than servicing consumer customers. So that's kind of my 2 cents. Does that make sense?
It does. I think I always feel a little bit sorry for them because they always have led with technology-wise, and they've been ahead of the game. And then a modest European company perhaps doesn't shout as much as others will, and that hasn't served them well, unfortunately. But you're right. They're probably the consumer drone side of it. It probably isn't worth all that much to them anymore. I think they've sold. I think even in the press release it said 4,000 EBs. The EB in South Africa is the second most popular airframe type to DJI types, which surprised me when I analysed the numbers here. I didn't think there'd be quite that many here. So yeah, is it enough? I'm sure they're not going to go pop quickly. They've got other things to do, but maybe they will just sunset some of those consumer. Well, how many consumer products are there now? Just a few proper toy size things.
Hey Gary, just a second. I'm still on the calls with the Campfire folks, so I'll be back in just a bit.
All right, okay, you carry on. Oh, shame.
They've got that disco wing, that disco wing, that fixed.
Yes.
I don't know what they put that out for. It's got all sorts of smarts in it, and it could in theory do mapping and things, but it's just really too small and too oriented at the consumer market, isn't it?
No, people are buying those. They're going on sale in electronic stores in the UK now for like 300 quid on Remainder sales, and people are buying them up and turning them into exactly that, mapping wings. And as we said, I think before, do you remember when Greg came on and told us about one of those Mika Sense sensors? Oh, look, that looks like that'll fit straight in the back of that disco. And guess what? It does. And so people, and there's an LTE mod for that, isn't there? Just with an LTE dongle, there's all sorts of stuff. And they did open up what's the autopilot on that thing called? Chuck, I think. So they opened that up so you could run your own software. I feel sorry for them, and maybe we are at peak consumer drone. I think, didn't we say last Christmas we were? I think we did, or didn't we say this Christmas was going to be the one?
Of course, yeah. But the thing is that little wings like that are they suitable for mapping? Because they tend to be really kind of wobbly, and you're going to get that parallax thing going on as the wing rocks and so forth, and you have to gimbal mount your cameras or something. I don't know how you get on with that, but I would have thought that they weren't a particularly good platform for that if you're going to do it on a commercial basis.
Well, they're good enough as long as you keep within weather limits. If you want to go out on a hurricane, then you're going to have a little bit some issues. Yeah, I mean, they'll be equivalent to. Also, that eats into the EB a little bit. The EB is only tiny. I think I want to find a brochure, but I only think it's a sub-meter. I think it's an 860 odd mil wing. So it's only tiny, the EB, and they've sold 4,000 of those. At the moment, they outfly multi-rotors by several minutes. But what I will say is I do think they need to. Well, we had that guy, the aerodynamicist, on you weren't about a couple of weeks ago, and he increased or improved the aerodynamics on them by a third, mucking about with the wingtips. But I do think they're coming to a point where they don't have a fixed wing airframe that has a long enough endurance. 3 hours is the new half an hour, I think, and 6 hours is going to be standard very, very soon. So
do you think the DJI announcement is a DJI disco?
I think it would be very interesting if it were. I think they're going to start missing out on the BV loss. I guess they've also got to come to a decision: is if the consumer market's falling away for them as well. I suspect it isn't, but they don't have a hat in the ring at all. But I think that the main problem with that for DJI and most 99%, not for you, dear viewer, because you're cleverer than that, but for most DJI users, just letting go of the sticks is what they want to do, and having that thing orbit somewhere it's smacking trees or whatever. It's just, you know, it's not a multi-copter sort of way of flying. Firefly 6 Pro better for landing. Well, yes, it's a VTOL. Any thoughts? Any thoughts? No thoughts.
No thoughts at all.
No thoughts. No, I think. Well, we'll see. We'll see. We'll see tomorrow, isn't it? That the DJI announces, isn't it? I think
it's 28th, was it?
Yeah. 28th, I think. Yeah.
28th. So. No, why aren't they announcing it in New Zealand? We're already in the 28th. What are they doing?
There you go. You see, but it's going to be a handheld camera, isn't it?
Yeah, there seems to be, I've noticed a little bit of noise about handheld gimbaled cameras like the Osmo. You know, I don't know if it's an Osmo 2 or something. Who knows?
Mad RC said the UK commercial UAV show last week. The feeling was that both Parrot and Unique, as DJI has become its own ecosystem now, they'll just continue to drive its own sales, and the rest are fighting for what's left. Well, yes, maybe that's the case. And I must admit, I've seen. See, I forget the names of them now. Not the one they remained at the Spark, the one after that. the very little one.
The Air.
Yes,
the Spark's the very little one. Or the Tello.
Whatever. No, not the Tello. But anyway, I've been flying one of those, and it is fantastic. It's been flying in a great deal of wind and all that sort of thing. The pictures are good. It's good enough. I can't see why anyone would buy anything else, really, if that is what you want. Okay, you're not going to use it for commercial mapping jobs and things like that, but you know, it's a good to go in your pocket. Off you go to fly and capture whatever you want to capture. Then, yeah, I can't see what's better at the moment. Very big uphill drive for Unique and Co. Very big.
Yeah, there's 1,000,001 of these Chinese drone vendors in the market, and none of them have really, because it's so fragmented at the bottom end of the market, they just can't touch DJI and its slick marketing. It's got worldwide support. It's got everything you want. Whether you love them or hate them, you've got to admit that they have done a really good job of turning that into a consumer product.
Yeah, you do. You do.
Indeed.
Now, talking about long-range endurance aircraft, Nicola, what have you got on the bench there that you've put away and hidden?
Nothing.
Oh.
Well, I used to have a bench like that.
Yeah, we know yours didn't like that.
All right. Let me just get it without breaking it. Okay. So, wow, magic.
It is.
Yeah. Today I've started to put together a 6S 6P lithium-ion battery to go into the Crosswind, which also got the Parrot gimbal, and I actually flew on Sunday with that thing. And it does perform well, but there are some issues, at least in the conditions I flew in. It's not quite as good as the Feiyutech gimbals were, but very close. And you know, there's really no alternative right now, so we'll have to make do with what we have. But the limitation I felt on Sunday, because of the battery I was using, was pretty severe, because I'm using a 6S 12,000 milliamp hour lithium polymer battery, which is now about probably 11 amps, not 12 amps. It's been just used and abused so much. But I wanted the plane to run a mission and then make it all the way to the top of a nearby mountain. Thing is, it ran through the mission, which was about 30-something kilometers, but I don't know, the battery just wasn't used for a while or something. It started dipping pretty low, so I actually headed back. And then I thought, okay, I'm gonna need to make a battery out of these, and that's going to give me twice the capacity of what I have now at what 300 to 350 grams more weight, which is next to nothing for the Crosswind. So that's what I'll be doing until the end of the week, because the weather forecast is pretty grim, sadly, and probably will not be able to go out flying, so might as well get something useful done. The thing is, though, I am really getting annoyed with these wooden props.
Oh, surely not.
Yeah, they look amazing. I can't argue against that. No, yeah, they look amazing, but I really do feel like they are not as efficient as they can be. I don't know why. It just feels that way. I mean, the plane looks aerodynamic enough not to be an issue. I'm guessing the motor KV might have something to. I'm thinking higher motor KV and wooden props, not a good combination if you want efficiency. So good news is I've got some 510 kV motors on my regular Nimbus from MFD, the one with the carbon tail, if anybody remembers that. And I think I'm going to remove those from that plane and put them on the crosswind and pair them with some 12-inch props, APC props to be exact. And I'm going to see how this is going to work out in terms of efficiency compared to the wooden props with almost 600 kV motors. Now, I don't have a fully calibrated current sensor, but I have been able to estimate a ratio to, in my head to correct that real-time current that I'm seeing. I have to multiply it by 2.2 or something. So I was seeing about 20 amps at full throttle while it was gaining altitude, which should equate to just over 40 amps in real current draw. And I was actually quite surprised because the plane went up 800 meters in pretty short time and nothing burned out. I always love it when that happens.
We can fix that.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's one of the easy things to fix.
What's your feeling on the wooden props? And then we'll get back to Greg, Bruce.
Yeah, wooden props are not as efficient as other props, mainly because they tend to be thicker in cross section to give them the strength, which means you've got a more drag from the prop. So therefore, especially with high KVs, that drag, the drag goes up as a factor. It's a square. Every time you double the revolutions, you're going to square the amount of drag. So you want to run low KV. The main use for wooden props is where you want rapid motor response, like in a aerobatic aircraft where you want to be able to accelerate the entire prop very quickly because they're very light. But even these days, carbon has sort of taken over from that as being the lightest or best strength to weight ratio. So yeah, the best props have a very thin profile, and also the tip design is incredibly important. And a lot of wooden props tend to be based on older designs in terms of the planform of the prop blade, so you get a lot greater tip losses. So you go with a more sophisticated propeller, you'll make a huge difference to your performance.
And APRC is asking, have you got the new tail for the crosswind?
Not yet, but I have information that hopefully by the end of the week, MFD will be in possession of the new tails. So hopefully around that time, they should start shipping those out. And I really, I really am looking forward to getting that tail, because while diving on the way back from an altitude and the plane going over over 80, 90 kilometers an hour, I started getting this, even as violent as some of the videos I've seen, but it was stabilizing the plane and trying to move manually the elevator in the opposite direction did help to tame it down, lowering the speed as well. But it's really unnerving when you're really high up and really far out to see that sort of behavior. And at some point you think, okay, so what happens if it dips down and I lose control? I'm not going to be able to manually slow it down or put it upright. And I really do hope that Charles has managed to correct the angle on the tail, but I'm guessing we're going to know about that when we get it and install it. And I really do hope it's going to make the plane like fly well at higher speeds as well, because I do like to dive fast, because I usually push the battery till the very end if I know I've got enough altitude. And you know, I count on that altitude then to bring it back home quickly and, you know, have enough to make it home and not worry about where am I going to go and look for the plane, which has happened to me once.
But wouldn't you be better off keeping that height in your pocket and arriving overhead at a slower speed intact? And
oh man, that's gonna take forever.
Well, look, if you're ripping your aeroplanes apart because you're getting bored and putting the nose down, you know, you can't blame the manufacturer.
It's amazing how far you can glide from 400 feet.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, yes.
Yeah, 400 feet. Yeah. Okay, sure. Let's go with that.
But I mean, if it's got some known issues at speed, then surely you just dial the autopilot up to avoid that speed range at the moment.
Or spin it to get it down.
Or spin it. Yeah, that's another good way of doing it. Yeah.
Problem. That plane doesn't want to spin, so
just move the CG back.
I actually the right CG for high efficiency mapping flying, or whatever MFD are calling it, is about 2 centimeters, I think, to the back of where the safe FPV CG should be for their wrong tail, which is a weird concept, but I reckon the plane flies well tail heavy as well as nose heavy if they're confident that moving the CG back would make it high efficiency without causing issues. Some people with tip stalling. I have tried everything I can think of to make that plane tip stall, and no luck.
What about putting flaperons on for steep descents?
Yeah, that would involve cutting into the wing, making mods that are not there by default.
No, if you've got ailerons on the wing, has it got ailerons?
Right.
Just
okay, yeah, flaperons. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. A programming step I'm really too lazy about.
Just the wings off. Or why not just wait 2 or 3 minutes longer and fly a little bit slower?
Yeah.
You know.
It also involves, you know, unplugging one of the ailerons from the on the autopilot. That's the first output, and plugging it on output 5, and then going into Mission Planner and programming that to be another aileron. Oh yeah.
Yeah, much quicker just to rebuild the plane when it crashes, I think.
much easier. Much easier.
Indeed, yeah.
Well, let's move away from this nonsense.
Crashing's out of the question, hopefully.
Well, yes, let's hope. But anyway, let's move away from this frivolity, because Dr. Greg has been doing some good deeds, some very, very good deeds in the wildfires. Well, it's a sad that you're doing it. Really, it's a shame that you have to do it. But you have to do it, and you've been trying out. If you go back a few episodes, dear viewer, you'll see several episodes. You'll see Dr. Greg was talking about his sort of idea of quick mapping, following roads and transferring small amounts of data rather than huge photos. I'm not explaining this very well. Perhaps you could do a more succinct job, and perhaps you could tell us if you managed to use that in anger in these recent California fires, and what happened after you.
Yeah. So I just shared the link of kind of the output too for the county website as well, of like what the results were, and so I'll kind of start at the beginning a little bit. As we saw, like the news of the fires spreading into the town of Paradise, I kind of knew that we were going to go back in. So this is my 3rd fire in about 13 months in terms of being on scene with public safety teams who are doing all the flying. And then I'm mostly just the data coordinator, I guess you would call it. So it's a huge team effort. I don't ever want it to think like it's just me out there like leading this thing. It's a giant interagency task force. So about a week after the fire, so the fire has burned about 18,000 structures, and about 14,000 of those are homes. And so to date, there's about 85 people that lost their lives and about 250 that are still unaccounted for, which could be any number of things. So we would expect that death toll will rise as they search and clear this town. So the majority of the town of 27,000 people is pretty much gone. But by gone, it's like there's still like trees and roads and all these kind of things. It's just like the houses are gone. So it's a little bit. It's not like it's wiped off the face of the planet, devastated, but it's definitely it's gone. So I was brought in again to coordinate. So we went under an emergency waiver for the wildfire for the TFR, and that was granted by the FAA and in coordination with CAL FIRE, who is leading the charge in terms of the air attack and managing the airspace. That's really all CAL FIRE who's fighting the active fire. So we arrived. I think the Thursday, 1 week after the fire had hit, to help in kind of that damage assessment recovery. We did a preliminary day of just kind of figuring out what methods we're going to use. It was just daunting in terms of thinking about, like, the town is like 20,000 acres, you know, and of that, 90% of the structures or so are gone. So how are you going to deal with 20,000 acres? Ideally, you would bring in a manned aircraft and just map it. But the visibility was like a half a mile or so. And also it's super active airspace for fighting the fires. So really poor visibility from up high. They wanted data as quick as people can get it. And so that's kind of what we were tasked with. We were capped at 300 feet and visual line of sight. And also the teams are all public safety, law enforcement, and fire teams. And so primarily we have Phantom 4 Pros or Mavics or Inspires or kind of the standard off-the-shelf equipment to work with. An EB or something like that was not going to work. I'll just clear the space and answer the technical questions because you would lose it in about 20 seconds in the kind of haze. And so you just couldn't do it. Initially, I tried some ultra fast stitching methods. So Pix4D has Pix4D fields that works with a Phantom 4. Drone Deploy has kind of Drone Deploy live map, some of these fast methods. I showed it to the search teams, you know, who were clearing the neighborhoods, and they wanted the full resolution, which means I had to go from like 60% overlap to 75% overlap. And then the processing was going to take, you know, even rapid processing, that full processing was going to take a long time. And so that was a bit of a daunting task. And it was one of those experiments that works in theory, but only if you're okay with lower resolution data that's better than satellite, but not drone data like people are expecting. So then we had about 16 teams come in on a Saturday. We had 3 days to fly. One of those days we were shut down on a Sunday because Trump came. So we took a break while Trump came in and toured everything. That actually gave us a planning day in between, which was nice to break up. So it was really 2 full days of flying. One day with 16 teams, one day with 15 teams. A team as a pilot and then an observer or 2 there to kind of be spotters as we're flying. CAL FIRE has a structure damage map that shows like the assessment of all the damage. And mostly it was just red throughout the town of full 100% gone. So what we did is we went into Drone Deploy because they have a way you can share missions pretty easily. So we defined missions and zones around the structure damage, trying to get 250 to 300 acres. And I thought, well, on a Phantom 4, conservatively 50 acres of flight, maybe in a day someone could get 300 acres done. They ended up being faster than that, but that's how I broke up the missions in Drone Deploy. And then we had a master list in Drone Deploy that people could look at the whole time. And that way they could define smaller sections as they see fit. They couldn't do mission continuing with the battery because it's just, with line of sight issues, it would just be gone again. So a master mission plan. I had a flight coordinator that was law enforcement who was very good at organizing people and making them do things better than me. And he would actually, we went to Kinko's about 10 minutes, like the photocopy place, about 10 minutes beforehand. before closing, and printed giant maps and also other maps that people could draw on. And we had just stick-it notes tracking teams the whole time of where they were at in each zone. And we tried to make sure that the zones overlapped enough or didn't overlap enough that we could do kind of airspace mitigation ourselves. We also had an advisor from CAL FIRE there who was on a radio. So if aircraft were entering the area, we could figure out who they are and whether they're coming back. And we would shut down that zone or those couple of zones while we were mapping during that time. So over 2 days, we did about 518 flights. Ultimately, that was about 460 gigs of photos, about 70,000 photos. And then in each day, we would have a runner that would just run it down to Drone Deploy in San Francisco, 2 hours away. And then Drone Deploy guys stayed up all night just batch loading 1,000 photos at a time into sections. And that way, all throughout the following next day, so Saturday to Sunday and then Monday to Tuesday or so, the maps would just be popping up as they finished processing. Now, that's not a repeatable step for Haiti and other places, but that's what we could do because I only had a couple of laptops to process, and like to process it all would have taken forever. So we just ran it down, and they were gracious enough to donate their time and engineering, et cetera. So every day we would collect about 250 gigs of photos, but they would have it done by the end of the next day, which is pretty mind-blowing. So from there, then Drone Deploy was able to, so on top of the hill, things went really well, and like the missions were great, and we created this whole method that I invented that's called Greg's Ziploc bag with a red sticker method. And so once you're done with your zone, you come back, you hand me your SD card, you put it in a Ziploc bag, and you label it what zone it is, and you put a red sticker on it. A red sticker means I haven't backed it up yet. It gets backed up on a hard drive. I had a technical assistant just the whole time running SD cards and backing everything up onto hard drives, and then we would give the SD cards back. So basically a pilot, you just need to come get your zone, get your SD card, and go. Like I don't need to coordinate any more than that. The flight coordinator coordinates all that. In the end, though, we had like all these pieces of maps, and so the county really was under pressure to release the data, and so we needed to visualize that in a way that was going to be useful in the near term, and then plan to how they could visualize it in the long term. Drone Deploy pulled another rabbit out of their hat and actually was able to merge all those layers together. For the 2D maps, they overlaid the 360 panos, so in each zone we had people doing panoramas, and that way we could overlay those. And then I ran a third experiment, and that's the georeference video. That was a pretty amazing experiment. I had 3 teams of sheriffs, 1 driver and 1 flyer, and they would able to drive and also fly the drone and map every major road in that city. And I had them start on all 3 major roads and then gave them all a cross section, and they were done in 2 batteries in an hour. We mapped the whole thing with video, and by the next day had it up on maps. So that's like actually one of the biggest wins of the whole thing, was like use video in hour 1 and then go into panos and mapping, et cetera. So Drone Deploy was able to kind of merge it all together to their credit. And like I got a stitched map on the night before Thanksgiving or the day before Thanksgiving, when I thought that was totally impossible. I had already told the sheriff's office, look, I can give you panos on a map and some of this other stuff. We're not going to be able to get the full map. And it was really to their credit. And like, I got a little emotional when I saw the map because I had stressed for 7 days without any sleep, trying to get this done. And we got it to them, and they were able to release it on Thanksgiving Day to the tens of thousands of people that are evacuated, all the insurance companies, et cetera. So, huge team effort. And I won't call it a win for the drone industry. I'll call it a hell of a proof of concept, because the win will be when we have a repeatable process and that can be done anywhere in the world. And we don't have that yet, but we have a pretty damn good proof of concept that we can make better and have the conversation in the coming months of how do we do this better. So that's kind of the hodgepodge of the story. I'll get a full kind of write up of it for SUS News, but that's kind of the story. So.
Well, I don't know. Well, first of all, well done to you, well done to Drone Deploy, and well done to everybody that that works there. Quite amazing. I don't really know where to start unpacking it. It sounds to me like there's an awful lot of the puzzle revolves around moving SD cards and people and managing people. As much of a factor as the actual RPAS operation itself and the RPAS flights. That seems to have been, not to downgrade it, but it seems to be the least of your worries in some ways.
Yeah, like I feel like we're dialed by our third fire. Like we have it pretty, not dialed, but like it's just little things like, oh, if you get SD cards that are a faster rewrite speed, I can turn it around faster. Or hey, like let's make sure we have other kind of maps that we can move around and print it off to, and like little things like that. But I feel like, man, the team's like, it grew. I was ready for my cell phone to blow up and technical questions, and it grew strangely quiet by about noon. And then people started coming back with data. Like they were just out in their zones, getting their maps done and like cranking it out. So we did 17,000 acres in 2.5 days. That's not total acres. That's like how much, that in map is is smaller than that. But we covered 17,000 acres down to either a 1-inch if you use the Phantom 4 or a 2-inch if you use a Phantom 4 Pro was 0.79 inches, and then a Phantom 4 was like 2-inch resolution. So we mapped that whole down to 2-inch. Now, whether we need 2-inch resolution in the future, that's a good question. Kind of over my pay grade, but that's what we did.
Well, yeah, and just a question from Richard, who says he lives in NorCal near Sacramento. How do you volunteer to help you, Greg?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I had a lot of people reaching out to me. So like pilots in the future, the pilots are all going to be public safety. Like I know people want to help flying, but like it's still this is only the third wildfire that they've been allowed to fly with drones. In the future, like what I will need probably is a big trailer with like 20 computers and servers lined up. And the help is really like the thing that helped me the most with that reduced my stress by about 50% from the last fire was I had a guy named Michael who just helped take all the SD cards, check them off the zones, transfer them, put green stickers on the bags, and transfer them all to hard drives, and then make sure all the folders were labeled appropriately and everything like that. That kind of helped. Like the boring stuff that's super crucial, that's what I need help with. You need to be willing there to just sit and label SD cards and transfer it and track it all and be able, and that way I didn't have to focus on that while 15 law enforcement people are asking me questions and people are calling on the phone and we're briefing, we're trying to get ready for press briefs and all that kind of other stuff that you don't think about.
Wouldn't you want to be parking those press briefs, or are they very important?
The press briefings?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it basically, the sheriff of Butte County was under incredible pressure to provide information to the people that are evacuated. And so it's not necessarily telling them like what the result, it's just keeping them informed that there are drone teams out there. This is what they're doing. This is the type of data they're going to collect. This is the goal of that collection. And these are somewhat of a timeline of when you should expect those kind of results. So it's not, hey, we're doing all this stuff. It's actually the sheriff's office communicating to the residents of like what they're doing and how that will assist in the process, particularly of resettlement. They're starting, now that the rains have come, they're starting to let people into certain areas. These neighborhoods are super sketch and dangerous with trees and power lines and walls that can collapse and giant holes. But as they resettle and let people back in, at least you have high resolution data that you can look at and know and kind of expect, see what you should expect about your property. So that's kind of, it's not a promo press release, it's just a communication press release.
So is somebody tagging all this imagery now with tree over road and this, that, the other, power line down there? And
yeah, so the next step is, so drone deploys visualization was amazing for the public and to get it out. Thanksgiving kind of messed me up the whole holiday. So normally what the process should be, and this is where I dropped the ball, like my biggest struggle is just like when I have 15 teams up the hill and then I go down the hill into town, like then it's kind of just me trying to make it work. I don't have 15 GIS teams there ready to go like I need. And so what we need to do is take those drone deploy sections or Pix4D or anybody that's stitching them, and they needs to go into ArcGIS, the standard language for all these agencies. And it needs uploaded and it needs tiled, and then you can overlay the roads, the property boundaries, the search boundaries, which is what they were doing. They were taking all our data immediately and then using very high resolution printouts and putting it on tablets so that they could organize the search of thousands of homes. That still, like, as much BS as the drone industry has had, like, this is the time that it's like, oh, actually drones are pretty useful, you know, like all the hype. And this is one of the times that, like, actually we're coming through as another tool, one of many tools, but this is pretty useful. So that's the next step. Is that yesterday I drove up to the county. John Tribini, if you know John Tribini, he's probably on this one. So John has really fast internet. So he was tasked with downloading every single map layer. It ended up being 244 gigs, downloading it super fast. We got it on a hard drive, and I drove it up to the county, and I handed it off. Now, and walk them through the data layers that they'll need to upload to Esri ArcGIS. Esri Disaster Response Team then will help facilitate that tiling and that layering and those different data layers. So John did his part, a big part, because it would have taken me days on my internet to just download all. We're just the data, man, and for drones, it's just crushing. It's just crushing. I don't know what we're gonna do. So we got to figure this problem out.
Well, isn't the internet coming to us, as it were, as it generally gets faster in a lot of places? Bruce,
isn't the solution? The solution is obvious. You get all those SD cards, as they're doing now, putting them onto a hard drive, and then you get a drone to deliver the hard drive.
Yeah, that would have saved a couple of runners. But yeah, it's like maybe it's easier to fly from, you know, the Philippines to Singapore if there's a disaster, and just plug it into super fast internet, or do it all offline in chunks at the lowest resolution possible. You know, there's ways to facilitate it. It's just I'm shooting from the hip here, you know.
There was a saying when I got into computers in the 70s, never underestimate the bandwidth of a station wagon full of data tapes.
Yeah. It's definitely like that was the way to do it. That was the way to do it. So,
but in a lot of ways, that's the technology part, and that is going to be fixed by Moore's law, even though it might be broken. But that'll sort of be fixed by Moore's law. But you're still going to have the physical people issues, not issues, but, you know, things to think about. And what I was wondering when you're talking then is, do you think you've got a handle on the number of, how many teams would you have liked to have had there? Do you have an idea of numbers to cover an amount of ground now?
Yeah, I think now that we have this kind of process of, you know, defining zones, it's really just a matter of how many acres do you need to cover in what amount of time, at what altitude. If we can get beyond visual line of sight, amazing. If we can map at 400 feet or even 500 or 600 feet for a short amount of time, we'll get done in half the time, right? So a lot of it is just working side by side with the air management teams, getting them to trust the drone teams better. And typically we're not dealing with tens of thousands of acres. I mean, the last fire, Redding, was 1,000 acres, but spaced out. And Coffee Park in Santa Rosa, that was more like 300 to 500 acres. So like this was unprecedented, you know, it's huge.
And I suppose though you were operating within a TFR, so surely you can do what you like altitude wise, can't you? As long as you're talking to the air boss and know.
Yeah, according to the FAA, yeah. But with the air bosses, like, again, they just wanted us at a low altitude at 300 feet, and that's what they wanted. And so if we're going to be allowed in, then we got to follow their rules.
Yeah, so, fair enough. Yeah.
You know, and that way they'll trust us for the next time, you know.
Yes, and you'll probably find that altitude will eke its way up as the trust is built, which is, you know, a positive thing. So just remind me again, how many people's in the team that goes out with the drone?
It's at least two. So it's at least two. Okay. Nobody's on their own for a lot of reasons, safety included, of just but typically it was you know, because we are in fairly treed area, it was good to have a spotter kind of, you know, two kind of sets of eyes tracking the drone at any given time. So at least two people. So I mean, there was a couple dozen teams up there of folks that some of them were pretty new to mapping, and by the middle of the day, everybody was a pro. So it goes to show how kind of they're great at flying. They just hadn't mapped before, and we could teach them and get them up to running like super fast. So that we could do again.
So it sounds like Pix4D and Drone Deploy and all the others have got to start building in layers that the Esri disaster management tools can use straight away.
Yeah,
so it sounds like there's a bit of friction, tiny bit of friction there.
Well, Drone Deploy has a way to push direct to Esri as tile layers. In this case, it just happened that it was easier to get them all the raw data, the county, all the full control and autonomy just by downloading everything and driving it up. They're overwhelmed. I mean, the drone data is one fraction of their entire job right now of dealing with the cleanup and the toxic residue removal and all the septic tanks that are there. And I mean, it's a disaster zone. So as easy as I can, you know, I'm on call still. I'm still answering questions. Any technical questions go to me about how the data can be used. I don't, you know, I only got paid for, or I will only get paid for about 3 days of this work. So, you know, I'm covering costs, but this is, you know, I'm just trying to help the community too, but I'm also trying to not have to go drive for Uber.
Welcome to the drone world. All living the dream, aren't we? And I see I'm the only one that didn't get the memo about the shirt tonight, so I'm sorry about that. I see everyone else is dressed like that. So well, you've pushed the boundaries. You definitely have. So fair play to you. And I guess you've carefully documented all this in your doctorly way, and
yeah, so in a couple of different ways. One, I'll get you an article that just kind of states who was there and what they did, and hopefully takes away from me. You know, I'm telling the story, but it's not just my story; it's everybody's story. The other thing that I did is I was actually about 2 weeks out from launching a online course on rapid response drone data. Throughout this whole thing, I had a GoPro and my phone. And every time I learned something new, I would apologize and step aside and record it. Like, lesson learned, hey, don't forget to bring a whiteboard so that we can check things off. You know, little things like that I'll then put in that course and share broadly with the community, you know, and hopefully build my small business on just training and making that affordable for folks. But it's 100 lessons learned in videos, and I did it the whole time as that I learned that lesson from the last time. So.
Amazing. I'm in awe. My hat tips to you in many directions. Very, very impressive work. And then, but actually, you're a plant bloke, aren't you? Really? Yeah.
You can take my plant master class, and I'll teach you how to. I actually have a new Micasense Ultim. That's the combo thermal and higher resolution multispectral. That's like on my list. Is like an unboxing of that camera for the next. I haven't even had time to open it, but you know, it's like,
for those that you don't know who you are, that's what you really do. That's your
totally. I have an online masterclass for vegetation mapping. You should totally take it. It's $397 and 10 hours of training.
You're a plant bloke. You're not a fire bloke.
I am not. I don't have a public safety background or any of that. I just, you know, these guys called me and we're like, we're getting good, not perfect, but we're getting better. And it's like, look at all the layers. Like, it's like 2D maps and panos and video transects. And like, I'm trying to tell this story using drone multimedia, the power of drone storytelling, but also the power of data. Like, that's my goal. And I focus on that so I don't have to deal with the tragedy. Like, that stuff bothers me, you know?
Sure. No. Well, yeah. No. Must have been dreadful for everybody that's there. Just from the comments, and Mad RC says, "I wonder what size or how many servers it would take to do this remotely on site, laptops or perhaps a container server farm." And Rybat says that he has satellite broadband technology with airborne relay capability, 3DES encryption, perfect for instant command, FEMA. But I wonder if it would be fast enough. More flat. Oh no, the abusive ones in the comments now.
Oh yeah. I told Patrick, I was driving up there and told him that I'm still not a disaster drone guy, that I'm still plant biologist. He can't call me out. But yeah, so they are flying. I should have mentioned. So we're kind of on the recovery side, but they are flying, particularly at night, reapers for the fire boundaries. So they are mapping all the fire boundaries in real time using drones out of that's Air National Guard. And so the air attack, they do use other bigger drones for that. That's just, we're kind of apples and oranges there.
Yeah, and then how quickly does that data then every morning, this is where the boundaries are? Is that in real time?
Yeah, so these guys, I mean, so the way that I think that this should all be run is under CAL FIRE, there's a giant GIS division, and that's guys with handheld GPSs, walking lines, reporting all that back. That's all the different data layers, and it all runs through an incident command that's a GIS. Like, and at 4 o'clock every night, don't go into those trailers, because all these guys are loading all the data that's then briefed at everybody in the evening. And then in the morning, they print these giant 13-foot tall maps of like the whole fire incident and all the cartography and all the lines. And so it's really a machine. Drones should just be a standardized protocol that's part of that machine. It shouldn't be like this own kind of, I mean, whether those are actually drone teams that you call in, that's fine. But the data gets fed into a standardized process, and then just make it part of the standardized process. They're just not there yet, and they will be soon.
Yeah, I think that's right across the drone industry, isn't it? There's data that's acquired that doesn't fit in right into the building information management systems that everyone's getting all excited about now, that surveyors and things use. We don't talk that language yet, but that'll all change. Moore's law will make that happen. I see John is here now, the man with his. Patrick wants to talk about eating pancakes in LA on December the 7th. Yeah, you American folk, you bewilder me really. But funny enough, I will put the link there because I do have it ready. Hang on. Well, I say I have it ready, but I will put it in the main comment shortly. Talk amongst yourselves while I do this. Here we go. I
did find a chicken. That was a little friend. So I was standing there planning missions, and this like perfectly healthy chicken came up to me and like I fed it and gave it water, and
and then someone ate it.
No. I called the animal rescue and told them where that chicken was at. It was like a really smart chicken. It survived a whole wildfire. So
there's never a frying pan and breadcrumbs around when you need them, eh?
No, man, that chicken's smart enough. If it can get away from a wildfire, it was probably smarter than all of us.
You probably find an awful lot of Mother Nature got out the way and moved itself on quite quickly. Is there any more questions from the floor here for Greg? This is an amazing story, and I'll be writing
up. So I have a couple of write-ups of just kind of meat and potatoes side of it, and then kind of a call, yeah, and chicken. No, I like that chicken. I hope it survived. And then also just on the data side of like, look, we like really got to think about this stuff, because everybody's building their platforms, but those platforms, if they're not in ArcGIS, sorry, like then it's just a pretty web link, and like you got to push it into the standard format. Like that's what they use, So how do we do this again, and how do we do it better next time? I don't think I have the corner on the market of disaster mapping. I won't ever claim that. I just want to have that conversation and tell you what I learned, and you can tell me how to do it better. So
are you going to Patrick's pancake gig, or is it?
I think I'll look at my schedule. Yeah, I might drive down there. Patrick and I were both talking about trying to drive for Uber, so maybe we should.
Yes. Again, yes.
You got to pay the bill.
But funny enough, a lot of people. I don't know what's happened. What happened in Thanksgiving over there? Well, there are a lot of heartfelt conversations being had around home fires, because a lot of people are mentioning the hype curve at the minute. A lot of people are saying, "What's happening? Where's all the industry?" There's a lot of people. I don't know why. In the last couple of weeks, it's the belts seem to have got tighter. Maybe it's Christmas coming up, and people have got to pay for presents and things like that. I don't know, but people, I don't know. Does anyone else notice that, or is it only me that's noticed that?
It's the decline of Bitcoin that's caused it.
Well, there we are then. Well, I'll just make a note of that. I'm glad you've told me. I'm now fully aware. No, I see a lot of people are talking about all that sort of thing, which is amazing. What was I going to say? We've mentioned, when you said about standardized information, that's thought about. That allowed me to say, well, because we haven't done the newsy bits. Well done to Altitude Angel and the Guardian UTM and the multiple flights that happened in controlled airspace in Manchester last week, and where that link to that is that UTM prints flight strips that air traffic controllers are used to, and the flight strip goes in on the rack as a normal aircraft. So they haven't got. Well, yes, they do have screens and they do have all that sort of thing. They do put the data in, but it arrives as the chat would expect it, and that's a sort of a if you will, an example of people churning out data as the end user would expect it. And we do need to do more of that. You're quite right, Greg. We can't just build our own little islands and think we're ace. Look, we've invented a new way of doing everything. Yeah, no, you're quite right.
Well, like at this point, like the pilots, to me, they're just soldiers. Like, go get it done and bring it back. And it's like, okay, then what? And there's a lot of opinions and a lot of different software and a lot of different options, and it just all needs streamlined. So, and it's not going to be any one solution. Like, look, I pulled 3 different solutions together this time, and I did it different last time, and I did it different the time before, and I can't just use your own cloud. It needs to go to the right place. So,
I guess you're always going to be, well, sadly, you're probably always going to be in a position to drive down to drone deploy. You've got to see how it works when you're not in a position to drive down to drone deploy.
Yeah.
And no doubt,
basically, you need desktop processing in a lot of it. So currently.
But I see Patrick's Uber is a Drone Beard. Hello, guys. Oh, Drone Beard. Well, yes, you've got this. That's what we have here. Patrick's Uber is going to be a 5G flying taxi. 5G being the new buzzword that we must surely add to every single thing we do now. We shall not release a press release unless it says 5G. I got into trouble again, as I normally do, ranting at somebody because one of the people that are making tethered things for painting buildings, tethered quads for painting buildings, have said they're going to use 5G to provide a data link down from this thing. Well, why wouldn't you put it in the cable? It's why. So they didn't like me saying, why don't you put it in the cable? But anyway,
pragmatism will not be allowed.
No, we don't have common sense. It isn't allowed here. Now let's see. The Mad RC saying the sad part of the market is the pilot will become just the basic skilled labor, ended the industry in the data handling. Well, we're already getting there. I mean, drones in the box are very much a thing, and that's probably what you'll end up deploying at the fire. The fire engine will turn up, and it won't care. It won't care what the drone's doing because somebody somewhere else will be operating it, or commanding it, and it'll come back and it'll land in the fire engine. And I think being an RPAS operator is going to be one of the shortest career paths in the world. I don't think we're going to have 10 years of. We'll have BV loss guys. We'll have the big stuff. We'll have the Predators and the Reapers and all that kicking about. But the small stuff.
The flip side is that, like, look, I can turn any law enforcement or fire person into a mapper with basic flight skills, and I can do that in 3 flights or 4 flights. Like, that's great.
True. But I think we're at that border between the drone being in a box and not needing somebody there. Yeah, I don't know. Correct. Let's see. I've been doing too much talking. Let's see if I can tempt Nicola or Bruce out of the box. No. All while dropping, Ian says, all while dropping Amazon packages. Yes, delivering while they do it. You're right.
No, you're right, Gary. With the rise of, dare I say it, AI and other techniques, a lot of the stuff will become pretty much autonomous, and you'll just be the guy that pushes the button to let it take off, it'll do its thing, come back and land. So yeah, we're the wetware in the loop, and the wetware is always the weakest link. So we will be designed out of that link, and it will become an autonomous thing. Goodness me, we've got cars that can drive themselves on the freeway. Surely we've got drones that can do their own, mapping and charting of that sort of thing. So yeah, it's just a matter of time. And as you say, this career of being a drone operator is a very short-lived one.
And I think that's part of the sort of noise I'm hearing at the moment of people panicking that they're, be it Part 107 or in the UK PIFCO sort of operations, they're just not running how they thought they would. And big companies are bringing it in-house now. So they like the idea, they can see the value in it, so they're doing it themselves.
Look at Skydio compared to the DJI products. The Skydio is pretty much, you don't have to fly the damn thing. It'll just follow you around and avoid the obstacles. So we're already a long way down that progression. Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if tomorrow DJI doesn't add a little bit of that somewhere. That wouldn't surprise me. They've got it. If they might do that before they bring the airplane out, but I still think it's a handheld camera. That's what I think. I don't know.
A handheld camera with wings that flies and has AI.
Yes. How's working on the standardization game on hardware? Is there anyone working on standardization in the hardware?
What about the ISO announcement that the ISO is doing standards for drones? Have we spoken about that? Because that's kind of really important, isn't it? ISO, they're the people that complicate everything.
Well, yeah, what's clever about that is it wasn't actually ISO that said they were doing that. It was one of the vendors who is quite a key part of that and involved in that, and it's quite a big part of his sort of business plan is to say he's on that committee. And they've released the standards for consultation. They haven't actually, it's not as far down, but they've definitely got the column inches.
Do you think it'll have much traction? Because I remember when ISO 9000 came out, everybody had to be ISO 9000 approved, or you were nobody. Is it going to happen with drones? We're going to have ISO standards. You'll have to be ISO compliant before you'll even get a look into some of the major contracts.
Well, what was it that Europe said today? One of the EASA things. I can't remember now. I should be able to remember. There was a little standard that they wanted. Oh, everything's got to have a CE mark and this and that and the other. And ASTM F38 story for tomorrow. ISO 107. Ian Gates says here. So it is. So Patrick has got a standard story tomorrow. Well, that's good. That's topical then. But yeah, it's all been kicked around for ages, hasn't it? And what will come of it, I don't know. As I said, I think on LinkedIn, I don't think the eventual winners yet come over the hill. I think something will stand up. You've just got to get DJI on board, haven't you, really? Whatever it is. If they're not on board, then we're all in trouble at the moment.
LinkedIn, that's like Facebook for people looking for jobs, isn't it?
It is. Oh, it's a shocking thing. It is. It's worse than Facebook. Well, that's why I changed my job title on it all the time, because it's actually worse than Facebook, because it's just, at least Facebook is nonsense, and this is nonsense trying to be serious. It's the most preposterous things you see on it, but it's good for winding people up.
Hundreds of invitations. Like hundreds of people sent me invitations to join LinkedIn, and I just delete.
Yeah, I know. It's but you just come and dip your toe in and have a laugh at some of the stuff. But yeah, it's definitely a lot of 107 conversations going on. Oh, look at that. Look at the time. The time is, and we started early, so we are definitely over time. So I should say now at this point, has anyone else seen anything else this week that has caught their eye?
Shall I read that bit from the BBC again?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah. Okay, I spied this on the BBC website. It's about drones being used to control gulls and things. And it says, an anti-gull drone aimed at spotting out-of-sight nests could be used to film through bedroom windows, councillors fear. The Cheltenham Borough Council wants to buy a drone similar to the one used in Worcester, being used to tackle the bird's growing population. But Councillor Max Wilkinson said, a drone could well be close enough to see through our bedroom windows. That's the biggest worry they've got, is that the drone, which is looking for birds' nests, might be spying through people's windows. Seriously, what has the media done to us? They have vilified us beyond belief.
Yeah, same thing can be accomplished by somebody with binoculars in the next door building.
For instance, so you've been told, allegedly, apparently so. Maybe.
It's just for decoration.
I think there should be licenses for using binoculars or living next door to somebody else.
Yes.
Like you need a special permit or something.
I think they do have that. They have these numbers you got to put on your house now, just like your drone.
Is there an ISO standard for next door neighbors?
Well, you have to sit an exam, or you have to go and live on your own.
And standardization as well.
Standard neighbors, yes, absolutely, absolutely. Mad RC is saying, did you see the proposal from in the UK, the CIA, to charge operators for mistakes with ops manual renewals for PIFCOs? Issue is these are generally caused by the CIA in the first place. I have seen that. And I can't think of a good example off the top of my head, but it is things like AMSL, AGL, altitude, and all these other things. Very one or two words that they disagree with sometimes, and they are making people rewrite the page. And they're potentially going to charge you now for that. And then Justin Miles says, have you seen the new our man's not here? Ian's not here. Have you seen the new Nikon P1.125 optical zoom camera? Well, Bruce says, over to you, Bruce.
Yes, I've seen that. It's got some mixed reviews. There are some good things and bad things about it. It's for what it delivers, it's not a bad price actually, but it is a bulky, heavy damn thing. But getting a 3-meter lens and something that you can carry around, it's pretty impressive. I'd like one, but I'm not going to buy one because the value equation isn't there for me. But yeah, the massively long reach they have means that why are you worrying about drones? You got someone 6 miles away and they're looking at the nose hair on your face. It's
I was going to say, is that Justin Miles's new binoculars? Then is that what he's using?
Yeah, it must be. Imagine if you put one on a drone. Woohoo!
And Richard, unfortunately, will be banned from this. He's using, as you should realise by now, common sense isn't allowed. He says the anti-drone device being curtains. But that said, we could probably start selling thicker curtains and actually call them anti-drone devices or something with AI, 5G AI, Bitcoin-based curtains, and we could probably sell a few of those.
I'm going to render some up right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I've done some in 3D. Obviously, it's not to scale.
You might even be able to get IKEA to carry them.
IKEA, yes, the IKEA anti-drone curtains. I feel an advert coming on, and I feel silliness continuing to happen. So I think on that note, and unless anyone else saw anything else that caught their eye, going once. Foil.
Well, I assume you mean drones, not women. So yeah.
Oh well.
Got none to say.
That's back to the bedroom windows. I don't know.
No, that's not going to go down that. Not going to go down that road. Mad RC saying the foil-lined AI-enabled, blah blah blah, anti-drone curtains is quite right. And on that note, I'm going to say thank you very much, dear viewer, wherever you might be. I see you've all been all around the world. Don't forget, go and listen to Patrick ranting. Let me read it. Let me read it to get it exactly right. The Winter 2018 Drone Symposium and Pancake Breakfast. That's on the December the 7th, and it's $50. Now, BYOP, I haven't actually. Oh, very good. I looked away, and look what happened. Hang on. It's not quite the same, but it'll do. BYOP, is that bring your own pancake? I didn't quite understand what the BYOP was. Do you know what that means, Greg? You speak American, Greg.
I don't know. I hope for $50 I get a free pancake. So.
Yeah, buy what? Buy up? What on earth does that mean? I've no idea what that means at all. Anyway, all right. With that, I'm going to say thank you very much. And Greg, amazing, Greg. I'm looking.
Thank you. Team effort.
Yeah, team effort. I'm looking forward to reading that about all that in SGS News. And well, thank you, and thank your team for everything you do. And
goodbye from the Hat and Beard Club.
Indeed. Indeed. All right, guys.
All right, thanks, guys.
Viewers, bye-bye. Cheers, everyone. Bye-bye. Have a safe week. Catch you next week, 2100 GMT. Bye-bye. He didn't have the mouse ready to hit the stop.